They ripped my clothes off right there in front of everyone, calling me a gold digger who wasn't worthy of their son. My mother-in-law just stood there laughing while I was humiliated and completely broken. But what they didn't realize was my father was watching the whole thing, and he was about to show them exactly who I really was. You've got to stay tuned until the very end because the revenge my father served up is going to leave you absolutely speechless. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. Now, let me take you back to the beginning, to where it all started. My name is Mia, and this is the story of how I learned that sometimes the people who are supposed to protect you are the very ones who hurt you the most. And sometimes, justice comes in ways you could never have imagined. I was just a regular girl from a small town when I met Adrian. We were both in college studying business. He was charming, kind, and he made me laugh like no one ever had before. I fell for him, and I fell hard and fast. Within a year, we were married in a small, intimate ceremony. It was perfect. At least that's what I thought. Adrian came from serious money. The Whitmore family was old wealth, the kind that comes with a whole lot of expectations and judgments. But I didn't care about any of that. I loved Adrian for who he was, not for what he had. What his family didn't know, and what Adrian didn't know either, was that I came from money too. Real money. The kind that makes the Whitmores look like they're playing dress-up. My father, Sterling, is a self-made billionaire. He built an empire from absolutely nothing. And I grew up in a world of private jets and endless possibilities. But I saw how people treated my father, how they smiled to his face while they were secretly calculating what they could get from him. I saw how every friendship, every relationship, came with a price tag attached. So, when I turned 18, I made a decision. I changed my last name, moved far away, and decided to live modestly. I wanted to find love that was real. Love that had absolutely nothing to do with bank accounts or business deals. My father understood. He's always respected my choices, even when they worried him. But he also made me promise one thing. If I ever needed him, truly needed him, I would call. I promised. And for 2 years, I kept that promise locked away, determined to make my marriage work on my own terms. Adrian's family made that nearly impossible from day one. His mother, Clarissa, looked at me like I was something she'd scraped off the bottom of her designer shoe. She never missed a single opportunity to remind me that I didn't belong, that I wasn't good enough for her son. She'd make me serve tea to her friends, and she'd introduce me as the girl Adrian married. Never even by my name. She'd critique my clothes, my hair, the way I spoke. Nothing I ever did was right. Adrian's father, Vincent, simply ignored me. I could walk right into a room and he'd look right through me like I was completely invisible. Maybe that was even worse than Clarissa's active cruelty. At least she acknowledged that I existed, even if it was just to tear me down. And then there was Natalie, Adrian's younger sister. She was perhaps the worst of all because she smiled while she stabbed you in the back. She'd compliment my dress, and then whisper to her friends that it looked cheap. She'd invite me to lunch, and then spend the entire time talking about how Adrian could have married anyone, how many beautiful, wealthy girls had wanted him. The constant message was always crystal clear. I was lucky to be there, and I should be grateful that they even tolerated me. But I tried. God, I tried so hard. I thought that if I was patient enough, kind enough, eventually they'd see me for who I really was. I thought that love would be enough. Adrian would tell me not to worry about it, that his family would come around eventually, but he never stood up for me, not even once. He'd just tell me to try harder, to understand that this was just how they were. 2 years passed just like that, 2 years of swallowing my pride, of accepting constant disrespect, of pretending that everything was just fine. And then came our second anniversary. Clarissa insisted on throwing us an anniversary party. Not for us, of course, but for her. To show off to her society friends, to prove that her son had the perfect life, even if his wife was, in her words, unfortunate. I wanted to say no, to refuse to go, but Adrian convinced me otherwise. Maybe this is her way of finally accepting you, he said. I really should have known better. The party was at the Whitmore estate, and Clarissa had spared absolutely no expense. When I arrived that evening, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Crystal chandeliers hung everywhere, each one probably worth more than most people's entire houses. A live orchestra played classical music off in the corner. Champagne fountains bubbled with expensive bottles of champagne that I couldn't even pronounce. There were ice sculptures, towers of imported flowers, and a red carpet leading right to the entrance where photographers were waiting. Over 200 people were invited. Not friends, not family, but business tycoons, celebrities, politicians, anyone who mattered in high society. Women dripped in diamonds and designer gowns that cost more than cars. Men wore custom suits and watches that could probably fund a child's entire college education. Luxury cars lined up for miles, being handled by a team of valets. And there I was, in my simple cream-colored dress that I'd bought on sale. I'd thought it was pretty when I'd picked it out, but now, standing among all the success, I felt like a complete fool. I could feel their eyes on me, hear their whispers. That's her. That's what Adrian settled for. Poor thing. She looked so incredibly out of place. Clarissa found me within minutes, her smile sharp as glass. "Oh, Mia, you actually came. How quaint you look." Natalie giggled right beside her, radiant in a silver gown that probably cost more than I'd spent on clothes in my entire life. "We're so glad you could make it to your own party," she said sweetly, the insult buried deep within fake kindness. Adrian was immediately swept away by his father, talking business with important men. I stood all alone, trying my best to make myself invisible, counting the hours until this complete nightmare would finally end. I had absolutely no idea that it was about to get so much worse. The party was in full swing when it happened. The orchestra had just finished a song, and Clarissa took the microphone to make a toast. She was thanking everyone for coming, saying something totally generic about family and love that made me want to laugh at the sheer irony. And then her expression completely changed. Her hand flew up to her neck. "My necklace!" she gasped dramatically. "My pink diamond necklace. It's gone." The entire room went silent. 200 people stopped talking, stopped drinking, stopped eating. All eyes turned to Clarissa as she clutched her bare neck dramatically. "Someone has stolen my necklace," she announced, her voice rising with each word. "The pink diamond is worth $2 million, and it was right here just an hour ago." My stomach dropped. I knew what was coming even before she said it. I could see it in her eyes as they locked onto mine from across the room. "Mia," she said my name like a direct accusation. "You were in my dressing room earlier. I saw you." 200 pairs of eyes immediately turned to me. I felt like I was drowning. I was just looking for the bathroom," I stammered. "I didn't take anything, I swear." "She's lying," Natalie chimed in, appearing right at her mother's side. "I saw her too. She was definitely lurking near Mother's jewelry case. She looked extremely suspicious." "This is absolutely ridiculous," I said, my voice shaking uncontrollably. "Why would I steal from you? I don't want your stupid necklace." Clarissa's voice was ice cold. "Everyone knows you married my son for his money. You've been after our wealth from the very beginning. This is just proof of what you really are. A common thief." The room erupted in a frenzy of whispers. Phones came out immediately. People were recording everything. I looked desperately for Adrian, and finally found him standing with his father. "Adrian, please tell them," I begged. "Tell them I would never do this." He looked at me, and for a moment I actually thought he was going to defend me. Then he looked at his mother, at his father, at all the important people who were watching, and he said absolutely nothing. Vincent stepped forward, looking more menacing than ever. "Search her right now in front of everyone. If she's truly innocent, then she has nothing to hide." "You can't be serious," I whispered in disbelief. But I could see from their faces that they were dead serious. Clarissa and Natalie advanced on me like hungry predators. I backed away slowly, but there was nowhere to go. 200 people formed a tight circle around us, their phones held high, recording every single second of my complete humiliation. What happened next is going to haunt me for the rest of my life. "Then we'll do this the hard. Please just stop." But they didn't care about my pleas. Natalie grabbed my other arm, and together they started pulling at my dress, ripping it. I fought back, trying desperately to protect myself, But there were two of them, and I was already shaking so loud ripping sound. In the middle of that grand. The orchestra had stopped. That doesn't mean she didn't hide it somewhere else. This is completely insane, I cried, wrapping my arms tightly around myself. I didn't take your necklace, I swear. Get her out of here, Vincent ordered the security guards. Remove this thief from our property immediately. Two large men in suits approached me slowly. I looked one more time at Adrian, silently begging him to do something, anything at all. He stood frozen, his face completely pale, but he didn't move. He didn't say a single word. He just turned his back on me and walked away. That moment broke something deep inside me. Not the humiliation, not the false accusations, but watching the man I loved choose his family's approval over my dignity. The guards grabbed me roughly by the arms and dragged me through the crowd. The people parted like I was diseased. Some spit insults at me. Gold digger, thief, trash. I heard it all as they pulled me through that mansion. Down the marble stairs, past the chandeliers and flowers and all that expensive beauty that hid such ugliness underneath. They threw me out the front gates and locked them tightly behind me. I collapsed on the cold ground outside, shivering in my undergarments, my entire body shaking with sobs. Inside, the party continued as if nothing had happened. I could hear the music starting up again, hear the laughter. They'd already moved on. My humiliation was just entertainment for them. A story they'd tell at their next gathering. A young valet, barely 20, saw me and rushed over with his jacket. He draped it over my shoulders without saying a word, his eyes full of kindness. That small act of kindness from a complete stranger made me cry even harder. I sat there on the cold ground, wrapped in a stranger's jacket, and realized that I had absolutely nothing left. No dignity, no husband, no home that I could even return to. My phone was still in my purse inside the mansion. I had nothing except one thing. One single promise that I'd made to my father 2 years ago. I borrowed the valet's phone with shaking hands and dialed the number that I knew by heart. It rang twice before his familiar voice answered. Dad. My voice broke on that one word. Dad, I need you. I need you right now. Where are you, baby girl? My father's voice was immediately alert, full of concern. I could hear him moving around, could hear the urgency in his tone. Through my tears, I told him everything. Where I was, what had happened, how they'd stripped me in front of everyone. I told him about the false accusations, about Adrienne's silence, about being thrown out like garbage. When I finished, there was a long, heavy silence on the other end of the line. Then my father spoke, and his voice was something I'd never heard before. Cold, controlled, and absolutely furious. Don't move, he said. I'm coming. And then he added, Mia? They have absolutely no idea what's about to hit them. He hung up. The valet stayed right there with me, offering silent support. Your father? He asked quietly. I nodded weakly. He'll be here soon. 15 minutes later, the night exploded with light and sound. First came the cars. 10 black luxury SUVs and limousines rolled right up to the Whitmore estate like a presidential motorcade. Then came a helicopter, its spotlight illuminating the entire property like it was daytime. The party inside stopped again immediately. I could see people rushing to the windows, pointing, and wondering what in the world was happening. The center limousine door opened and my father stepped out. William Sterling doesn't just enter a space, he completely commands it. At 60, he's still imposing, tall and broad-shouldered, with silver hair and eyes that can freeze you solid with just one look. He wore a suit that probably cost more than the Whitmores had spent on this entire party, and his presence was so powerful that even from outside the gates, I could feel it. Behind him came 20 security personnel, all in black suits, moving with military precision. 5 lawyers in extremely expensive suits carried briefcases, and the city's police commissioner himself walked right beside my father, looking official and extremely serious. News helicopters started circling overhead. Someone had tipped off the media. Later, I'd find out that someone was my father, who'd made absolutely sure that every single news station in the city knew that something incredibly big was about to happen at the Whitmore estate. The gates opened wide. The guards who'd thrown me out earlier now stepped back nervously, recognizing power when they saw it. My father walked straight toward me, and the cold fury in his eyes melted into concern as he looked at me sitting there, still in my undergarments and the borrowed jacket. He took off his $50,000 coat and wrapped it around me himself, then lifted me to my feet. "I'm here now, baby girl," he said softly. Then he turned to face the mansion, and his voice carried like thunder. "Which one of you touched my daughter?" Inside the mansion, through the open doors, I could see that the party had descended into complete chaos. Everyone was trying to see what was happening outside. Clarissa appeared at the entrance, Vincent right beside her, both looking confused and incredibly annoyed at the interruption. "What is the meaning of this?" Vincent demanded, his voice full of indignation. "This is a private party. You're trespassing." My father smiled. It wasn't a nice smile at all. "Am I? Let's go inside and discuss that, shall we? I think your guests will definitely want to hear what I have to say." He walked forward purposefully, and the crowd parted before him like the Red Sea. I walked right beside him, wrapped securely in his coat, feeling safer than I had in 2 long years. His security fanned out all around us. The lawyers followed closely behind. The police commissioner stayed close by. We walked through that mansion like we owned it because, as it turned out, we actually did. My father took the microphone from a completely stunned Clarissa. 200 wealthy, powerful people stared at him, trying to figure out exactly who he was. Some of the older ones were starting to recognize him. I could see the realization slowly dawning on their faces. "Good evening," my father said, his voice calm and controlled. "Let me introduce myself properly. My name is William Sterling. Perhaps some of you have heard of me. Sterling Global Empire, 50 billion in assets." He paused for a moment, letting his words sink in. "Yes, I can see some of you recognize the name now." The room erupted in a frenzy of whispers. Everyone knew Sterling Global. It was one of the largest conglomerates in the entire world, with holdings in everything from technology to real estate to banking. "This woman you just humiliated," my father continued, pulling me close to his side protectively. "This woman you stripped and degraded in front of 200 people. This woman you called a thief and a gold digger. She's my daughter, my only child, and my heir." The gasps were audible throughout the room. Clarissa's face went completely white. Vincent looked like he might faint at any moment. Adrian stood frozen in the crowd, his mouth hanging open in shock. "Mia came from more wealth than any of you will ever see," my father said, his voice filled with controlled anger. "But she wanted something that money simply can't buy. She wanted to be loved for who she is, not for what she has. So, she changed her name, lived modestly, and found herself a man who she thought would cherish her. Instead, she found you people." He snapped his fingers, and the large screens that had been showing happy photos of Adrian and me flickered to life with completely new content. Family photos appeared on the screens. Me as a child on a yacht. Me at our estate. Me at charity galas standing right beside my father. Official documents showing my real identity. Birth certificates. Trust fund papers. Everything proving exactly who I was. The crowd was completely silent now, watching the evidence of my real life play out on the screen. I could see people's expressions changing rapidly from curiosity to shock to horror as they realized exactly what they'd witnessed that night. They just watched a billionaire's daughter be stripped and humiliated, and they'd recorded it, laughed at it, and actively participated in it. "Now," my father said, his voice dropping to something cold and incredibly dangerous, "let's talk about what happens next." My father turned to his security team. "Show them," he ordered. The screens changed again. This time, they showed security footage from inside the mansion. I didn't know where these cameras had even come from, but later I'd learned that my father had them installed months ago. He'd been watching, waiting, and protecting me from afar, even when I didn't even know it. The first video showed Natalie entering Clarissa's dressing room hours before the party even started. She looked around nervously, then went straight to her own mother's jewelry box. She opened it, pulled out the pink diamond necklace, and slipped it into her purse. The second video showed her in the garden hiding the necklace under a rose bush. The third video was the most damning of all. It showed Clarissa and Natalie together in a private room talking. The audio was crystal clear. "Are you sure about this?" Natalie's voice came through the speakers. "Positive," Clarissa responded confidently. "We'll accuse her of stealing the necklace, search her in front of everyone, and humiliate her so badly that Adrian will have absolutely no choice but to divorce her. We'll finally be rid of that little leech." 200 people watched in absolute silence as the entire conspiracy unfolded right before their very eyes on the screen. They watched Natalie steal the necklace. They watched the two women plot my complete and utter destruction. They watched everything. When the videos ended, my father turned to face Clarissa and Natalie directly. "Would you like to explain this?" he asked quietly, but with a clear edge of menace. Natalie crumpled to the floor, sobbing uncontrollably. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. It was Mother's idea." "You lying little," Clarissa started to say, then stopped abruptly as she realized that everyone was staring at her in utter disbelief. The phones that had recorded my humiliation were now recording hers. The news helicopters outside were broadcasting this entire spectacle to the entire city. In a matter of hours, this would be international news. "Mr. Sterling." Vincent stepped forward, trying desperately to salvage something from this complete disaster. "Perhaps we can discuss this privately. I'm sure we can reach some sort of arrangement." "Arrangement?" My father's laugh was cold and humorless. "Oh, Vincent, we're way past arrangements at this point. You see, when Mia married your son, I did what any good father would do. I investigated your family, your business, your assets, and I found something very, very interesting." He nodded to his lawyers, who immediately began pulling up documents on the screens. "The Whitmore estate, this beautiful mansion we're standing in right now, it's mortgaged through Sterling Bank. I bought that mortgage 6 months ago. You're living in my property." Vincent's face went completely gray. "Whitmore Enterprises. Your company, Vincent. I've been quietly buying up shares through various shell companies. As of today, I own 68%. I'm the majority shareholder. You work for me now." The screens showed stock certificates, purchase agreements, all bearing my father's signature. "Your family trust fund, Clarissa. The one you use to fund your extravagant shopping trips and these ridiculous parties. It's managed by Sterling Financial Services. I froze it 10 minutes ago." Clarissa made a strangled, choking sound. "And Natalie?" My father turned to face her, still crying on the floor. "Those lovely boutiques you're so incredibly proud of, they're built on properties owned by Sterling Real Estate Holdings. Your leases are terminated, effective at midnight tonight." "This can't be legal," Vincent shouted, his voice rising in desperation. "You can't just." "I can, and I did." My father interrupted him sharply. "Everything by the book, all legal, all perfectly documented. You see, gentlemen, I didn't build a $50 billion empire by being stupid. I built it by being thorough. When you threaten what I love, I don't get angry. I get systematic." He turned to face the crowd, addressing all 200 people who'd watched my humiliation. "Let this be a lesson to everyone here. That woman you laughed at, that woman you called a gold digger. She has more wealth, more class, and more integrity than all of you combined. She chose to live modestly to find real love. Instead, she found you people, snakes in expensive clothes." The room was deathly silent. I could see shame on some faces, while others looked away, unable to meet his eyes. My father gestured to the police commissioner. "Now, unless you want me to press charges for assault, theft, conspiracy, and fraud, I suggest the Whitmore family start packing. You have 30 days to vacate my property. Please." Clarissa was on her knees now, her designer gown pooling around her. "Please, Mr. Sterling, we didn't know. We'll apologize. We'll make it right. Please just don't do this to us." My father looked down at her with complete contempt. "Did you show mercy when you stripped my daughter? Did you listen when she begged you to stop? You made your choices. Now you have to live with the consequences." Adrian finally pushed through the crowd. His face was desperate and panicked. He rushed to me, trying to grab my hands. Mia, please, you have to help us. Tell your father to stop. I love you. You know I love you. I looked at him, at this man I'd loved for 2 long years. This man I'd married, built a life with, and defended endlessly to myself even when he never defended me. Do you, Adrian? I asked quietly. Do you love me? Yes, of course I do. Please, you have to believe me. Then why didn't you stop them? My voice was steady now, clear and resolute. Why didn't you say one word when they accused me? When they stripped me, when they threw me out into the street, you just stood there silent. You turned your back and walked away. I was in shock. I didn't know what to do. You knew exactly what to do. I interrupted him. You chose. You chose them over me. You chose their approval over my dignity. You chose to be a coward. Mia, please. I'm filing for divorce, I said. The words came out far easier than I ever expected. Tomorrow. And I'm taking absolutely nothing from you, Adrian. No money, no property, nothing at all. Because I never needed your wealth. I needed you to stand beside me. And you couldn't even manage that. Don't tell me you actually mean that. We can work this out, Adrian. The most heartbreaking part, I went on, isn't what your family did to me. It's that you allowed it. Every single insult, every single humiliation, every cruel remark over the past 2 years, and you just told me to try harder, to be more patient, to understand them better. You never once told them to stop. Not once did you protect me from their venom. That's not love, Adrian. That's mere convenience, a way of making your life easier. He was actually crying now, real tears streaming down his face, a genuine display of emotion. I'm sorry, he choked out. I'm so sorry. I'll do better. I'll change, I swear. Just please don't leave me. I took a step back, moving closer to my father's side. I already left you, Adrian. The moment you turned your back on me tonight, you lost me forever. It was over the second you chose them over me. My father's lawyers stepped forward, each holding papers in their hands. Divorce papers, Mrs. Whitmore, or should I say, Miss Sterling, one of them announced. They're all ready for your signature. I took the pen and signed without even a moment's hesitation. 2 years of marriage, reduced to nothing, ended with a single signature. Adrian collapsed to his knees, but I felt absolutely nothing. Not even a flicker of pity, just pure, unadulterated relief. 6 months crawled by. The Whitmores lost absolutely everything, exactly as my father had promised they would. Their opulent estate was seized and auctioned off to the highest bidder. Vincent's company, once a titan of industry, went bankrupt within 3 months. Clarissa, who'd never worked a single day in her life, was now working as a sales associate at a mid-tier department store. Natalie's exclusive boutiques were shuttered, and she was stuck working retail at a generic mall, folding sweaters and stocking shelves. Adrian lost his luxury car dealership and ended up working a regular, run-of-the-mill sales job at some dealership on the outskirts of town. All their so-called high society friends abandoned them immediately, not even a goodbye lunch. That's the thing about people like that. They're only your friends when you have something they desperately want. As for me, I went back to being exactly who I really was, the person I was meant to be all along. Mia Sterling, Vice President of Sterling Global Empire. I worked side by side with my father, learning every facet of the business from the inside out, and discovered that I was actually remarkably good at it. I started a foundation for women escaping toxic relationships, helping them find the inner strength they needed to leave, and providing them with the resources they required to rebuild their shattered lives. I bought my own penthouse apartment with money that I earned myself, no strings attached. I traveled the world, made real, genuine friends, and slowly began to heal from the deep trauma of that horrific night. One evening, 6 months after everything had imploded, I was hosting a charity gala for my foundation, a celebration of resilience and new beginnings. It was a beautiful event, filled with people who genuinely cared about helping others, people with empathy and compassion in their hearts. As I was greeting the arriving guests, making small talk and posing for photos, I noticed that one of the coat check attendants looked strangely familiar. It was Clarissa. Our eyes met across the crowded room. She looked so different, almost unrecognizable. Older, worn, tired, and utterly humbled. Gone was the arrogance, the casual cruelty, the unearned sense of superiority. She looked like what she was. A woman who had lost everything because of her own terrible choices. She approached me slowly, hesitantly, as if she were afraid I might spontaneously combust. "Mia," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. I wanted to say I'm sorry for everything. I know it probably means absolutely nothing now, but I truly am sorry. Deeply, profoundly sorry. I looked at her for a long, silent moment, taking in the subtle changes in her demeanor, the genuine remorse etched onto her face. 6 months ago, I would have felt a surge of satisfaction at seeing her reduced to this, but now I just felt tired, weary of the whole ordeal. "I forgive you, Clarissa," I said, the words surprising even me, but they were true. Not for you, though. For me. So I can finally let go and move forward with my life. She started to cry, tears silently streaming down her face. "Thank you," she stammered. "Thank you so much, Mia. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting." I continued, my voice firm but devoid of malice. "What you did to me, what your entire family did to me, taught me something incredibly important. Family isn't always about blood. It's about who stands beside you when everything falls apart, who offers you unwavering support when you need it most. My father showed me what real love actually looks like. Protection, loyalty, and unwavering strength. Your son couldn't give me any of those things, Clarissa." She nodded, wiping away her tears with the back of her hand. "I understand," she said quietly. I hope you find happiness, Mia. Real happiness. You deserve it more than anyone I know." I watched her walk away, back to her coat check station, and felt something tangible lift from my shoulders, like a heavy weight had finally been removed. I'd carried that anger, that hurt, for so long. Finally letting it go felt like breathing fresh air for the first time in months. My father found me a few minutes later, his eyes filled with pride and affection. "You okay, baby girl?" he asked, his voice full of concern. "Yeah, Dad," I said, smiling up at him. "I'm more than okay. I'm really proud of you," he said, putting his arm around my shoulders and giving me a squeeze. "For being the bigger person, for moving forward, for being so incredibly strong." "I learned from the best," I replied, leaning into his embrace. That night, as I looked around at all the people my foundation was helping, all the women who were finding their own strength and reclaiming their lives, I realized something profound. The Whitmores thought they were punishing me by treating me like I was nothing, but instead, they inadvertently freed me. They showed me exactly what I didn't want in my life, helped me find my backbone, and pushed me toward the life I was always meant to have. Sometimes the worst things that happen to us are actually blessings in disguise, opportunities for growth and self-discovery. Sometimes we need to be broken down completely in order to rebuild ourselves stronger, more resilient, and more authentic. I walked into that anniversary party 2 years ago as a woman desperately trying to earn approval from people who would never give it, no matter what I did. I walked out as someone who didn't need anyone's approval anymore. And that, in the end, was the real revenge. Not my father's systematic destruction of their empire, though that was admittedly satisfying, but me thriving without them. Happy without their validation, successful on my own terms, and completely, utterly free. They thought they were stripping me of my dignity that night, but instead, they stripped away the last illusion I had about who they really were, revealing their true, ugly nature. In a strange way, they did me a favor. I am Mia Sterling. I am my father's daughter. I am enough. I always was enough, and I will never, ever let anyone make me feel less than that again. Sometimes people treat you badly because they mistakenly think you're powerless, an easy target. They never imagined that I didn't need to prove my worth to anyone. I always had it within me. My father taught me that real power isn't about money or revenge. It's about knowing your own inherent value and never letting anyone, under any circumstances, make you feel less than you truly are. That night, I walked into that party as a woman they thought they could break. I walked out as myself, stronger, wiser, and finally irrevocably free. If this story moved you, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel to hear more true stories of justice and redemption. Share this with someone who needs to remember their own worth today, someone who needs a reminder that they are enough. Comment below and tell me, have you ever been underestimated by someone who later regretted it? I read every single comment and value your insights. Remember, you are enough exactly as you are. Never, ever let anyone convince you otherwise. Until next time, this is Mia reminding you to never let anyone dim your light.